Are opposite sex friends worth it? Let's talk about it.
Welcome to Net with Lizzy and Lissa, where we analyze hidden costs and empower you to make your own damn decisions in life. Each episode covers a different facet of life, and at the end of each episode, we each give our takes on whether we think something is net positive or net negative.
I'm Lizzy, a strategist and consultant with almost 20 years of experience in finance and investing.
And I'm Lissa, a personal finance expert and a certified financial planner. We're best friends who talk about money
and everything else.
Are opposite sex friends worth it?
First up, running the numbers on opposite sex friends.
According to Pew Research, most adults, 66% of them, say that all or most of their close friends are the same gender as them. Women are more likely to say this than men. 71% of women versus 61% of men.
Interesting. Among adults 50 and older, 74% of women, compared with just 59% of men, say all or most of their close friends are the same gender as them.
In a study from YouGov out of the UK, they report that 84% of British people think it's very possible for heterosexual men and women to be just friends. So they believe in platonic friendships.
All right.
Yeah.
That tracks. And on the flip side, 7% of straight men and 6% of straight women think members of opposite genders cannot be just friends.
That there's more. There's always more. Well, we know there's more to life than numbers and statistics, so let's talk about it. Are opposite sex friends worth it? Okay, let's set some context.
Yeah.
For those who are new to the show, Liz and I would say we've always been in male-dominated spaces.
Yes, absolutely.
Primarily in growing up because of sports. Like at least for me, I played basketball.
I have 4 brothers, so I was born into a male-dominated space.
Me and my sister hung out with mostly our guy cousins.
Yeah.
So
that was very normal for me. I always wanted to be like the boys. I have a sister, but she's the oldest, 10 years older. So the siblings I wanted to be the most like were my 3 older brothers, and then I got a younger baby brother, and
so
that's
you're
who I spent my
surrounded
time
in
with.
age
Surrounded
by
by
brothers.
boys.
Yep.
I always had young girlfriends, but very much tomboy, sports, you know, play rough, that kind of thing.
So I want to say I have like a similar background to you, but yes and no, because me and my sister were a lot younger than my half siblings who were older. So we grew up with, mostly our cousins. We had like a niece and nephew who are around our age that were a boy and a girl. But then we had cousins down the street who were 2 brothers. And then we had cousins on the other side of town that were 3 brothers, all around our age. So I want to say that that's why I became very much so normalized to having guy friends. But me and my sister somewhere down the line split. I think it kind of changed for her. She still has a couple of guy friends, but not as much as I do. Yeah.
I don't think I would, or maybe I wouldn't if I didn't play sports.
Okay.
If sports weren't
so it was like the
important
added
in my life. Because, thinking like I'm very close to my brothers and my dad, you know, and so like that kind of one of the guys dynamic has been a thing in my life, but a lot of it is around sports culture.
Okay, that could be the added piece for me because my sister, while she did like play tennis and like did dance, I went into basketball, which is heavily male dominated, especially for our age back then. For
our era,
in the 90s, So that could be the missing factor that kind of set some parallels between mine and your universe as to why we are the way we are. So the context being that up until today, we're both in our mid to late 30s. Like we have plenty of opposite sex friends, but that doesn't come with its issues.
Yeah, it's can be complicated.
Yeah.
So I can't remember a world really where I didn't have opposite sex friends. When I was very young, they weren't necessarily my closest friends. But pretty much always had one or more guy friends who on one hand were like a very close confidant, like similarly to how I interact with women.
Yeah.
And then also had this kind of other tier of guy friends that were more like hang out, laugh, shoot the shit, go play sports, go do stuff kind of friends.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what I'm used to.
Yeah.
So
what do you want? Costs or benefits first?
Let's start with the costs.
The costs. Okay.
Yeah. What's at stake having opposite sex friends?
There's always the potential for the relationship or the friendship to not be on equal footing, like same.
Someone has feelings. Someone likes the other one. It's not just
one.
friendship for one party.
Right. And then for the times that they are on the same page and it's totally platonic, homies, friends, there's always the possibility for like their separate dating lives to be affected by the friendship. That's the main cost.
I think that's the biggest cost. It just can be complicated.
Yeah.
And it should seem simple, and sometimes it can be complicated.
And I don't think it's black or white. I think when I was younger, I thought it was black or white. This just made me remember of a story. So I had this really close friend who was like 8-9 years older than me. So it was kind of already an odd friendship because I was like, I don't know, 20 and he was like closer to 30, which, okay, it doesn't seem that weird, but back then it was. It's because we played ball together. So we were really good friends. We hung out all the time, strictly platonic. We were in the same friend group of people who played basketball. At one point, he started dating a woman, and it became clear that it was causing problems in his relationship that we were so close. Not that we were just friends who played basketball at the gym, because we'd also hang out outside of the gym. And I remember, this was back in the MySpace days, he sent me a MySpace message, basically breaking up the friendship. It was like, hey, I really found someone. I think she might be the one. And this pains me to like do this and say that we can't be friends and hang out anymore. But I think right now it seems like the best in my situation because it's causing issues. And I was so hurt. I was so upset. I could not see or understand that side at that time. Maybe because I was young, or maybe I just had a different worldview. Yeah. But at that time, I was so hurt. I cried. I was so hurt. I was like, damn, a friend breakup because of jealousy? Like, I was like, she's insecure, blah, blah, blah. That was my thinking back then. Yeah. Yeah. So
has that changed? Do you think you would see that differently now?
Oh, I do see that differently now. Part of it is because I have more of an ability to put myself in another person's shoes. I think there are levels to it, right? It's not just black or white, like a woman's insecure or not because of that, or a man is insecure or not. I think there's boundaries, there's levels of comfort, there's levels of friendship. I know we'll get to that. I think it's changed today that for me, if a guy told me that, I wouldn't cry and be so upset. I'd be like, that's annoying, but I understand. Yeah. And RIP to our friendship then. Or maybe I'll see you in a couple of years if that doesn't work out.
Come back around,
right?
Yeah.
So
which that's an interesting cost in and of itself. Is there is often a tendency for the relationship to ebb and flow when one of the partners gets into a romantic relationship, right? So suddenly they're less available. They, and that happens with all friendships, but I think it uniquely happens with opposite sex friendships. For me, I've experienced that in terms of like the emotional intimacy. I've realized that I had, especially for a period of several years, a few very close friendships with men where I was their emotional confidant, not their partner.
Oh, yeah.
And that was mostly a reflection of like kind of their emotional maturity with relationships to not feel safe, not necessarily with that person, just they didn't value that in a romantic relationship to have that intimacy.
Yeah.
Whereas
it felt safer to go to
a friend, right? And sometimes that's fair, right? Not every partner, romantic partner has to be all things. Yeah. But I realized like that can be an issue, certainly for them, it's selling their relationship short. And it can create blurrier lines sometimes.
Yeah.
And just make things complicated. And then when they do get in a relationship with someone where they feel comfortable, then it's like, oh, okay, what happened to our friendship?
Yeah. It's like, oftentimes I feel like it feels like a push and pull, like it's one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe in the rare instance, there's a healthy balance of both where you can create a new friendship out of it. And I have actually one of those where it's evolved over time. And now I just have a different friendship with the guy and also a different friendship with the girl, but we're all friends and it's all love, right?
Right.
So,
I think that's a positive case of there's an opportunity to all be friends, right? And that's been an interesting element. We both have experiences with bringing the new partner, introducing it into the friend group and hoping that they all get along. And a weird cost of that I've experienced is that they got along great and they became friends. Yeah. And then we broke up.
Oh, and then they stayed friends?
Then it's awkward to some extent. Like there's a little bit of level of loyalty, right? Like, you know, one of my best friends becomes their friend. They're loyal to me. But if we are all, you know, kind of the same level of friends, then it's like they're still cool with them. It creates an interesting dynamic.
So across the board, for anyone you date, are you cool with them having an opposite sex friend, or does it depend?
I'm hesitating because historically I have been cool with that. Partially just because it feels very hypocritical not to be. I have been burned by that recently. So I don't know that I would feel the same way. I think in the past have been like, I'm cool with it. I'd like to meet her, right? Or like, even if I never really cared if like they hung out by themselves. Like that didn't bother me. I don't think I was jealous in that way, but I'd feel more comfortable about it if I knew her. Yeah. Or sometimes we hung out as a group and then, you know, it wasn't like I didn't exist. Yeah. And so those, I think, are the situations that bothered me, whereas like I knew of this person, I was told about them, and then the relationship ended up being not what I was told. Yeah. But yeah, that's so tough. I think going forward, I probably will be, but I'll have stronger boundaries around it. And maybe similarly to what you described, like I used to not really understand that coming in the opposite direction of like, I know that there's nothing going on here. And so I would be frustrated by my partner's like insecurity around it, or feel like they didn't trust me. And I don't think it's necessarily that. Right. I don't think it has to be a trust thing. I think it can just be like a comfort and a respect thing.
But I feel like where I'm at, where you're at with the hypocritical part, right? Because I have a lot of guy friends. I've historically have through basketball, through just my personality, I guess. I don't know. And strictly platonic. And well, you know, I feel like in my life now, I can still maintain that friendship, those friendships into the future. I will be able to, no problem. I've always gone into a relationship or dating someone new with the fact that, oh, I can't judge or be mad at the fact that they have girlfriends because of my situation, which again, it's weird to say that like I trust myself and my friendships, but
I don't know if I trust yours.
I don't know if I trust yours. It always felt hypocritical to say, so I wasn't really being true to myself by not sharing that that's how I felt sometimes. Yeah. But I agree. Right? I think that's... But I do think there's a way to navigate that as I've gotten older seems to make the most sense. Like, well, if they're so close to you, like I'd love to meet them, right? Because I also trust my intuition. Like I can feel their vibe if they're actually cool, they're chill, if there's only a friend vibe. And if at the end of the day, if they're so close to your partner and someone you love, I think you can build some type of friendship with them. Yeah, I agree. It doesn't have to be like besties, but there should be a level of respect and love there if your partner does. That's just my view on it. And lucky enough, that's what I've found with Alan. So Alan and I, I'm so lucky on so many things that we have very similar values. We're very much in alignment. it was a mutual friend who introduced us, who's a woman. So they had a strictly platonic friendship.
Yeah.
And so
clearly.
she introduced me to him. And then he came to learn that I had a lot of guy friends, and I learned that he had a lot of female friends.
And similarly, he has sisters. So,
Yeah. But as I started to meet his friends one by one, I'm like, these are amazing people. I can see why they're so close to you. And I've never felt insecure or jealous or whatever. I will say there's that one or two who are kind of like not in that inner circle, but kind of like adjacent that I'm like, okay, I don't know about her.
Sure.
But if that person's not important to him either, he's just like, that's fine. I don't hang out with her one-on-one.
Yeah.
It's been very, very few. It's been like one or two people that are like that. And I'm like, oh, cool. Similar. I told him, same for you. If there's ever anyone in like our groups or adjacent groups that you just have a bad vibe about, you tell me. Right. Because I respect you more than anyone else. And I know like and I think he also errs on that side of not wanting to be hypocritical. So like he won't say things, but I'm like, I can catch on to it. And I think over time, like my friendships have evolved on their own, even without me putting a lot of effort into them.
Sure.
And so, they are what they are.
And I think it's also important to acknowledge that like different phases of your life, friendships play a different role.
Yeah.
That's not to say that they're not important or that you shouldn't be loyal to your friends, but a marriage or having a family with someone is a different thing, and that you can prioritize that if that's what the phase you're at in your life and what's important to you. Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's different for a woman to have guy friends versus a guy to have female friends? And I say that because I think there are a good amount of women like us who have been accepted into male-dominated spaces. I don't think it's as common or as socially acceptable for men, straight men particularly, to inhabit female-dominated spaces.
This is a tricky answer because no matter how much I try and how much self-awareness I build, I can't remove my bias. I cannot remove my bias that I am a woman and I know my relationships with men, and again, being in male-dominated spaces. And I agree that I cannot see it so much. Like, I don't know many men, at least like heterosexual men, who are in the spaces of come into my yoga classes or there are, right? Or talking to me about makeup and all these other female, heavily feminine things. I don't see that so much as, oh, we're going to go play pickup basketball with the guys.
Right. I think there's, just as a kind of side note, from a societal sense, it's more accepted for women to be masculine and inhabit those spaces than it is for men to be feminine. That is generally frowned upon by society, which is bullshit. But so kind of operating in those arenas can be tough for men. And so I think on some level, my bias says there is a little bit of a difference of like the shared activity with some of our friends might be go play basketball. Whereas is that the same? And I also think it relates to some extent to how men tend to form relationships that are around shared activity versus mutual self-disclosure.
Right.
Like our relationships tend to be around talking, building intimacy, sharing things with each other, whereas men can hang out and not know anything that's going on in each other's lives.
So to answer your question, like I feel like there's all these explanations, at least that I agree with, that explain why it's more common, it makes more sense, and I don't know if it's more trustworthy. Like it makes more sense for women to be friends with men, but not men with women. But then like it's the same friendship, right? It's still a man-woman friendship.
Right? Isn't that interesting?
Like, I don't know. Yeah. It's the perception of what it looks like from whoever is looking at it, right? Is it my man who's friends with a girl, or is it my man's perspective looking at my friendship with a guy?
Okay, so to that point, would you feel differently hypothetically, because like you've said you're comfortable with Alan's female friendships, but like if you were hanging out with people that he met playing football, soccer, in a male-dominated space, would you feel differently about those friendships than other opposite-sex friendships that he had?
Oh, like if okay, so there's an example. He goes to the bar to watch soccer games all the time.
Yeah.
And there's like one or two girls that go regularly and as part of the group of guys.
Right.
And that's not me because I don't really watch like that. And I choose not to go most of the time because I'd rather do other things.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's his thing. Go ahead. And he'll talk about them. And I will say when he first started saying their names, I'm like, it just kind of like goes over my head. But then like 2 weeks ago, I met one of them and she like, we chatted a little bit. She was so sweet and warm and we hugged like 3 times in that first interaction. And I was like, this is interesting, but cool. She's warm. She's cool.
Yeah.
And she also was dating someone else. So it was all the factors that made it comfortable that
Right.
I'm not going to think twice about it. Yeah. They chat every so often and they're friends and I'm cool with it. I don't feel any fear or insecurity that something would ever happen between them. But I don't know if that's more of a reflection of my trust in him.
Yeah.
Or just being cool with it now. I don't know, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, would I feel differently? Because in the cases of like examples I can think of in my past relationships, there were a wide range of opposite sex friendships, but the ones that I think bothered me weren't one of the guys.
Yeah.
And that may be a factor or not. Like I wonder if it would bother me so much.
Yeah.
If they were part of a group.
Yeah.
Or that kind of thing. I don't know.
But I think it comes down to what you said earlier. When you meet someone new and you start dating, you're still getting to know each other. You're still building up your trust and connection. At some point down the line, when you decide to be each other's partners, then it becomes like, okay, if your partner was going through some shit or needed something or needed support mentally, emotionally, financially, whatever, would they come to you or go to the friend?
Right.
That's where I feel like then you get to see how you really feel about it.
Yeah.
Because for me, in my own perspective, is it better be me at some point, right? If it's just I've known you for 2 weeks, I don't expect that.
Yeah.
Maybe a year or two down the line, maybe you start trusting in me more. But again, if you've been friends with someone for 25 years, how can I?
Well, that's interesting because to play devil's advocate, I do think there's some expectation that your partner fulfills every role for you. I don't mean you, but in general in society that's been romanticized, right? They're your lover, your best friend, your therapist, your everything. Yeah. And I don't think that's real. So like there are things, we're a same-sex friendship, but there are things I'll get from you that I'll never get from a partner.
Right.
And I've had, been in a very loving relationship with someone and have all this trust and, depth, and had a different friend see a different part of me or, bring out a different side of me, and we can talk about things that maybe don't interest that person. So I think that's interesting because there's trust and who do you rely on and who do you feel safe with emotionally.
Yeah. But how would you feel if your partner went to their homegirl best friend if I don't know, he was going through something really big? I guess it's different if it's the order, like goes to her first and then you, or not go to you at all.
Yeah, I think it depends on what it is and the order. Like, if it's just general distress, I think most people would expect to be the first person on their partner's list. And except maybe like their mom or, or even so. If it was like a problem in our relationship, I think it depends. Yeah. Because you'd want to know first, but at the same time, if it's okay for them to have a space. Yeah. Consult. Or if it's, like a work thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I probably wouldn't feel great about it, but at the same time, I can understand that.
So it depends on what the context, of course. Yeah. That makes sense to me. I think, again, like for me, it's evolved over time. I do go to Alan first with most things, but sometimes he's busy, he's at work, or I have a friend coworker, an old coworker, or someone who just understands the situation better.
Yeah.
So I'll go to them with it. Maybe I'll update Alan later, or maybe it resolves itself. But, you know, it's just picking and choosing like who to share what with.
I do think that comes back to that kind of what is the nature of most guy friendships versus, in my experience, most of the guys that I'm friends with are more likely to confide in me or be vulnerable with me or you than one of their guy friends. And that makes it a unique dynamic for them versus having another partner.
True.
Because if they're telling another woman something, you know, personal, that it has a different meaning, I think, that intimacy and vulnerability than a woman to a guy, because women tend to be more vulnerable and open with a lot of people, with
right.
you know, with all of their friends.
Right. I guess.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think where I would utilize a guy's perspective, or like a guy friend in a vulnerable situation, is if I was like butting heads with whoever I'm dating,
for sure.
and not because I'm like abandoning my relationship, but because, hey, from a guy's perspective, am I tripping, or what would you think? So that I could just get multiple perspectives. Because if you're just in an echo chamber with your girlfriends who are like, nah, fuck that, dude. Like, then you don't get to hear all the sides of how different people operate.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the benefits is you have a different perspective. Like, I think it's interesting navigating dating. So early, you know, dating with people and getting the point of view of your guy friends.
Yeah.
Right? Is this bullshit? What do they mean? And that's something to you have to sift through.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're like being a hater because they're protective of you, so, you know, or sometimes they're going to tell you like it is, that guy sucks, or, you know.
Yeah.
But the benefit of having another point of view is worthwhile, a different, you know, worldview and perspective. So
we've set the stage, you have plenty of opposite sex friends. Has that ever directly negatively impacted a new dating situation for you?
I'm going to say no. I can't think of an example where someone was like, oh, you have a ton of guy friends, that's not cool with me. Or if it happened, maybe it did, and it was like, okay, this is never going to work.
Yeah.
That said, I've dated people who had reservations about it. They weren't always transparent. And I've had relationships affect my friendships. And some of that because of like, you know, they have an issue with it. And so I have to kind of take some space. And sometimes because of my own navigating, like I was really close to this person. Now I have someone else I'm really close to.
Yeah.
So the relationship just evolves.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
I'm sure I have more examples, but one that I can think of, I think I actually alluded to this in our roommates episode, because I shared that I've many times had roommates that were men, that were guys, that were platonic friends. So I remember dating one person who was so actually, it was the year that I was living alone. There was like 1 or 2 years that I lived in my own apartment, but I was getting ready to buy a property, and I was going to rent out rooms and have another guy roommate, one of my close platonic friends. And while I was dating this guy at that time, he was like, wait, you're going to move in like with him? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to rent out the rooms. I'm going to house hack. And he's cool and he's chill. He's easy. He stays to himself. He pays his rent on time. And it was such, you know, we didn't end up working out that dating situation, but that was his perspective on it. And at that time, I will say I was less understanding and empathetic. I was just kind of like, what the hell? Like, you haven't even taken the chance to meet him. Like, you don't even know my friends. Not being able to put myself in the shoes that, you know, depending on people's backgrounds and upbringing, they might see it differently. They might not, they might be part of that statistic that thinks it's impossible for a men and women to be platonic friends.
Or even kind of speaking to that stat about the older generation, there used to be a lot more formal norms. Like I remember I was living in Spain and I had this interesting apartment. It was like 5 bedrooms. I had female roommates, but it didn't really have like a living room. And I had some friends there who were Dominican and living in Spain. Mm-hmm. And they came over and I think I cooked food and there wasn't really like a place to sit.
Yeah.
So I had invited them to my room because I have a big bedroom and they're like, no, that's inappropriate.
Oh.
Like you don't invite a man into your room.
Oh.
So I think, it's important to acknowledge there are other norms, mm-hmm. age, culture, probably even, I imagine like it's a little different in the South versus, that affect how you behave with the opposite sex.
Yeah, that's a good call out because obviously everything we are talking about is from not only a Western perspective, but like we live in California, we live in Los Angeles, we're very progressive.
Yeah.
And so we kind of view things differently. So I think it's good to call out that there are so many nuances based on your geographic location, your culture, and your age.
Yeah.
Like it's different upbringings have just, so that's why I would just say in more modern times, I'm just more open, like aware of that. I know that people come to things with a different perspective based on where they were brought up. Like I can have a conversation with a Republican or a Trumper in a room, right? And not like kill each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's still fascinating and oftentimes frustrating to have someone who sees the world so differently from you, but
they're just as convicted in their worldview
as you are with yours,
and it makes as much sense to them as yours does.
So that's why I would say like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I had that friend break up with me over MySpace, friend breakup over MySpace, I could not see beyond that. It was just so hurtful or whatever. Whereas now I'm like, I can see that. There's the statistic that there's a small percentage of people who think you cannot have a platonic relationship. It's not me, but I can see why. Like I can see why, right?
What I will say though is it actually kind of is a red flag to me for a man to not have any female friendships.
Like not a one.
Not a one, because I think in some situations that speaks to how a man views women. And how their value is only related to like a romantic sexual dynamic. Yeah. That's maybe, that's a broad stroke, right? So that may vary if they have sisters or whatever. But I think there are some men who you are invisible to if you don't have like a romantic or sexual purpose. I've experienced that with one of my close guy friends. You won't mind me sharing this, with his friends. Yeah. I've always been one of the guys. And so, I'll come over and like watch a fight, play beer pong, even though I don't really drink, whatever. But to a couple of them, they've met me 50 times and it's like, I'm not even in the room sometimes. And I'm like, I joke about it. I'm like, I don't have any value to them because they can't fuck me,
Yeah.
And so that's an extreme example, but I think it's actually can be a positive sign that of just being like normal and having respect for women if you have friendships with
if
them.
You're able to talk, connect, like be curious about them, even though you have probably not a lot of similarities. So I agree with that too.
Your side note, your roommate story reminded me of one experience I did have where I was talking to someone that I went to college with and ended up moving in with another one of our mutual friends from college. They were good friends.
Yeah.
We were all kind of part of the same group. And he felt really like jealous about it. And it was interesting because they knew each other really well. But it was just this funny dynamic. And I think I experienced more of that pushback from having a guy roommate than I did ever from just having a guy friend. Like
I guess because it's the supposed access and proximity.
Yeah. And you're in your like natural, people, you're going to walk around in your underwear. Like, no, I'm a human with decency when I have a roommate. But there's that perception, right, of that access.
Yeah. Well, I was running through my head about what the other costs were to having opposite sex friends. And perception is major, right? I can think of times where, so I made you think of something. I've always been like, I've posted my guy friends, and there have been many photos where we're just messing around, or like, you know, I might like hug them, or like I have one or two sitting on a friend's lap. Just, you know, we're both single. It's fine. We're not going to harm anyone. But then like I've posted them, and then when I started dating someone else, I'm like, wait, should I take these down? Like, right? Just out of respect, or like other people are going to think like, what's going on here? Like, you got a man, but you're sitting on another man's lap, right? So I have boundaries like that, but it's all based on other people's perception. Because if it was just up to me, I don't care what people think, but I do a little.
I've experienced that, and also had the perception of like, oh, you hang out with a lot of guys.
Oh yeah,
like you must be sleeping with them all. Yeah,
every single one
exactly.
of them.
Whereas like absolutely
all
not.
They're thinking in their head is like a train being ran.
Right. Seriously, I've experienced that too. Right.
Yeah.
Or like you're just really thirsty because you hang out with a lot of guys.
So,
like.
Yeah.
But that says, now I realize that says more about the person.
Yeah.
That they think my only value is
but
that.
I can tell you for a fact, in my 20s, while I was hooping all the time and making all these guy friends and having other people think and say those things, was hurtful.
It's hurtful.
So hurtful.
Yeah.
Like, what, you think I'm a hoe just because I'm able to be friends with everybody?
Right. Exactly.
Like regular friends, not friends with everybody.
Regular
friends.
friends.
Like regular friends. Just
that I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
that's a cost for sure.
Big cost.
Other benefit though, like you said, your friend introducing you, like it goes both ways, right? Meet other people.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you got a homie that's cute, or you know, like oh, meet my girlfriend. Like access to the opposite sex.
Yeah. How do you do that without you know? But interestingly, what I've thought of, because I think I've had these discussions with Alan like early on. We were like, all right, what are the rules though? Like, because we're very lax about it, but we still want to know what our boundaries are. And so there was a time that I think he met a friend of a friend. And so this was a woman. And like he was going to go grab lunch with her. And I just asked, like, does she know that it's like a lunch, like, because y'all are gonna network or whatever, because he said it was like networking, or does she think it's like a date somehow, right? Or like that was where my, I don't know, maybe jealousy came in. Yeah. But that's where I'm like, okay, now that we're together, now that we're married, how do we make new friends, right? Older friends is easy to navigate because all I gotta do is meet them, be around them. But making new friends, do we only make friends as couples, or you know, if you meet a friend of the opposite sex, naturally I should meet them at some point, and vice versa. So I think that's where we're at. That's a really interesting point, right? Established friends, pre-relationship, different thing. Is it okay to make new opposite sex friends while you're married? Yeah, while you're married. Yeah. And is it okay to make new one-on-one friends that don't? Right. And there's a difference with that, right? Because I've made new opposite sex friends while already being married, because like, you know, I'll go to the gym and play ball or whatever. Right. But do I go hang out with them one-on-one? No. We're just friends because we see each other, or we might even follow each other on Instagram. But right. I think it is different in general when that friendship is rooted in a specific interest. Like we both run businesses. And so that is kind of what grounds the friendship. And so that's what we talk about. Or we both have this shared hobby. Exactly. When it's just a friendship, hey, I think you guys would get along. That I feel like is a little nebulous and can be sketchy. Ultimately, it comes down to your guys' own preferences, comfort level, etc. All right. And also, this is going to sound terrible, but are they cute? Oh gosh, I don't know. How did we get this far into the episode and not talk about how much does that matter if they're attractive? Oh, it matters. It matters because it affects, you know, someone's own security or insecurity, even if it's subtle, right? They might be comparing themselves like, wait, why is I've experienced like the surprise. Like, what do you mean
they're not attracted to you? Or like, what do you mean there's no feeling that way?
Of course they are. Like, you know.
Yeah. And like, so then it creates, they don't trust you.
Yeah.
Because they think you're lying or sugarcoating it or whatever.
Yeah. Or they just don't trust anything about it.
Anything about it, right? That's I can't possibly believe that two attractive people aren't attracted to each other. And so then the relationship can therefore not be platonic at all.
I think it overall comes down to a sense of maturity and security and trust in your own relationship at the end of the day. But there will always be people who don't see that way. This just reminded me. We went to go sell our car the other day, and in line behind us at the business office was this older man. He was like in his maybe 60s, maybe 70s even, talking to one of the salesmen who was in his 20s, early 20s. And this guy was telling him straight up that, look, I'm going to give you some advice now. Never get married. Like, he's like, it's this notion that you're going to be with someone for the rest of your life. But I can tell you now, it's not real. It's not true. It's just what they feed you. And he was just talking about how he has different friends, women. He calls them friends. This is all because he was behind me. I wasn't talking to him directly. I just overheard him. He was talking about how he has different friends in these different places, like one in Cancun, one in like
got hoes in different area codes.
Yeah, basically. And he's like, look, they're my friends. I go out to see them. If they're loyal to me when I'm with them, then I'm loyal to them. Like, it was like this whole thing. And it's just like, but again, different worldview, different age, and whatever. I'm just like, it's just not going to be me. Me and Alan were looking at each other like, what the hell is going on? But like, I think you cannot have opposite sex friendships if one person in a relationship doesn't believe in it or understand it or whatever. So to me, at the end of the day, it's compatibility.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right.
20 cents?
20 cents. 20 Cents is the segment of the show where both Lizzy and myself, Lissa, each get 60 seconds to give our 2 cents on today's topic, whether it's net positive or net negative to have opposite sex friends. Where does 20 cents come from?
You get the opinion of 2 dimes.
2 dimes. All right, Liz, you're up first. What do you think?
I'm a net positive. I just can't even fathom a world without having male friends. It just, my existence has been that way, and it enriches my life. The costs of it have been vastly outweighed by the benefits, and some of that's just because I've been fortunate, or my partners have been understanding. In terms of my friendships, I've certainly had some costs in terms of my partner's friendships, and so that'll be new to navigate in the future. But I love my guy friends.
Yeah.
Case in point,
the bachelor party that we went to.
Yeah, Lisa and I, the only women bachelors at the bachelor party. All right, Lisa.
Easy. This one's quick and easy. Net positive for the same reasons that Liz said. Having opposite sex friends has enriched my life, and I see the world in so many different ways and different perspectives. Like, I've navigated the boundaries differently now that I'm older, but I wouldn't ever like give up all my guy friends ever. Yeah. So
never.
Remember, this is what we think at this moment in time. No one can make that decision but you. What do you think? Are opposite sex friends worth it?
Hit us up. Let us know what you think. DM us on Instagram at NetNetPodcast or email us at hi@netnetpodcast.com. And if you want to follow us individually, here's where you can find us.
I'm at Wealth for Women of Color on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram.
And I'm on Instagram and TikTok at live_well_Lizzy.
All references, statistics, and resources mentioned can be found in our show notes. This podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be constituted as financial advice. Remember to always do your own research, consult a professional as needed, and feel empowered to make your own damn decisions.